tracking all these edtech giants, their rise and their fall and their layoffs. Physicswallah has joined its peers, its brethren, to now lay off people. 70 to 120 people are expected to be laid off. You know, that begs the question, with the pace at which edtech players have been sacking people, what's the road ahead?
So I think, Shweta, there's no doubt that the road ahead is definitely bumpy, because all edtech companies, starting from BYJU'S, going all the way down to maybe a Vedantu or an Unacademy or a physicswallah and alike, they've all pretty much been on a firing spree all of last year, all of this year. So starting 2022, with the pandemic waning away and with people returning to some sort of normalcy, returning to offline physical education, you know, in contrast to the online education that they had become so accustomed to and were paying top dollar for, that trend started to become visible in 2022, and that downward spiral continues in 2023 as well. So I think physicswallah, which is again a unicorn, one of the better, more celebrated edtech you know, startups in the country, now joining the ranks of the likes of BYJU'S, which has laid off over 5,000 people, the likes of Unacademy, that has laid off over 2,000 people, Vedantu, which has laid off a few. So, you know, I think overall we've seen that this layoff on account of multiple factors. Factor number one, in any case, a startup funding winter, in any case lesser money by way of investments and stake sale coming into at high valuation coming into the edtech sector. Then the edtech sector has been confounded with challenges, grief of its own. They all went on a hiring spree during the pandemic, because that is when they really needed to scale up, and that was the right time to scale up. But then they ended up hiring far more number of people than they would actually have been able to sustain over time, and that is beginning to show today. So they hired people at a time when there was this demand for edtech, and now that demand has reduced, and hence what do you do with the excess capacity you had? So you're letting go of people. And then, of course, the third most important factor is the revenue. How many of them are actually seeing the kind of revenue flow in as it did during, let's say, 2020, 2021 and early days of 2022? So revenue has reduced. Startup funding winter has reduced the interest in startups in general, edtech in particular, with the COVID waning away. And then add to that the excessive hiring that had been done and the costs related to paying salaries, paying bonuses, keeping people afloat, maintaining large office spaces, all those costs coming under pressure, resulting in edtech companies across the board getting rid of people, physicswallah being the latest to join the ranks.
Right, so the whole host of reasons, as you mentioned. I also want to understand from you, you know, the spur, the growth that we saw during COVID, during pandemic, that seemed to be reversing in a way. Are people going back to physical classrooms, physical institutions? That being one of the reasons why edtech players who are primarily in online business are not going to do too well?
Absolutely.
Is this the end of road for them?
I think it has pretty much been fairly clear that people who saw online as the great digital divide to be bridged for education, people who saw, you know, digital stroke phygital coexisting even at a time when the pandemic was waning away, and those who thought that, you know, why would people go back to online schools, online tuition, offline school, offline extracurricular, extra classes, extra tuitions, when online offers you that convenience and sort of helps you mitigate other costs by virtue of sitting, you know, connected to the internet, sitting on your laptop or your smartphone. I think all of those are now receding, and it's fairly clear that learning and classroom learning is there to stay, and there could be these little volatility moments where there is a pandemic-like situation, or there is, let's say, pollution as it is in Delhi, or there are other sort of black swan events that may prevent you from going to physical school, physical tuition centers. But those are going to be small stopgap measures, short bursts, but nothing sustainable.
Not sustainable, not you know, lasting very long. Well, that's the indication coming in.